Welcome to Carolina Sculpture Studio. My name's Clint Button. I'm a granite sculptor. It's curious in this business how we have projects that repeat, or you start doing one thing and you end up doing three or four of the same type of project. We just did a video on repairing a head of a figure, a plaster figure, for table base, and that left, and just about as soon as that left, this Asian genre head showed up, and his earlobe is no longer happily attached. So I'm going to do a little more video to show how this is actually repaired. Now, one of the things to notice, as soon as you see this stone, you can see it has fairly large crystalline structure. Now, this is not the most desirable marble to carve. It's not structurally sound when you carve it. You can do good work with it. It's harder than a Carrara marble or a Colorado Yule marble, but the larger grain leads to different characteristics. You can see this has been repaired before, and you can see here on the top where it looks like there may be an addition. It's hard to tell because there's some natural inclusions underneath here, but this looks like it's filled. Looks like it's filled here. When this larger crystalline structure stone fractures or breaks, it doesn't cut cleanly like a Carrara marble will or a Colorado Yule. If you have a piece that breaks off like this, the reason they probably had to fill this and add something to it is because when that piece broke, it fell into many crystals. They don't break off, and they don't have any structural integrity. So this marble is comparable. This is very dirty, but it helps show the grain structure. This is a piece of Georgia marble, which is called a Cherokee marble from the northern part of Georgia, the state of Georgia. And you can see the crystals are very large and very broken. Now, compare that to a piece of Carrara marble, and you can see how fine that is in terms of the crystalline structure. And comparing the Carrara marble to a piece of Colorado Yule, the Yule has a little more sparkle to it, a little bit bigger crystals, but it's very, very similar. And you'll find the Tennessee marble, the Tennessee pink, is comparable to the Georgia marble. You know, it's very close geographically, just within a few hundred miles, you know, up around Friendsville, near Knoxville, versus the northern part of Georgia. So it's pretty close. But they both tend to be a little bit harder. They both can wear out your tools if you don't have the right. If you use your nice rifflers on them, you may find out they don't last very long, so test your tools before you ruin them. So, but what we're going to do with this one, normally I would try to drill this a little bit to put a pin in that. I'm a little reluctant to do it because this is a relatively small piece, and drilling that, if there's any pressure, it's likely to fracture this whole piece. So I'm probably just going to have to clean this glue and put new glue on. Now, I did a video discussing the different epoxies and what to use, and to use a stone specific, a product that's engineered for stone. So what I'll be using for this is a two-part epoxy that I buy from an industry supplier, and it just mixes equal parts. I probably won't try to tint it because this is pretty white and we've already got an inclusion here. So, but the problem with a lot of the consumer products that you buy, this bond, this is some that's cured. This is left over from the other repair. This has a little bit of flexibility to it. I can bend it slightly, but it's very tenacious. It has a good grip. One of the problems with a lot of regular generic epoxies that'll fix anything is when they cure hard. And when they cure hard, they don't allow for any movement in the stone. It can't expand or contract, even at a microscopic level, because if it does, it breaks the tops of these crystals off, they fracture, they shear, and then your joint just falls apart, which is what's happened here. You also, when the glue cures or sizes and it shrinks just a little bit, it does the same thing. It will shear off all these crystals. And so because this maintains a little bit of flexibility, even though it's really tough stuff, it makes a fantastic joint on stone, whether you're doing a repair or whether you're going to install this with a threaded rod on a base and you don't want anything to happen, you don't want anybody to steal it. So we'll get this cleaned up, see how it looks, may be able to turn a little bit of a hole in there to put a pin, but by the time I drill that, I'm going to be under 1/2 inch almost in every direction, and that's really getting into the scary territory, especially where this already has inclusions, and it may not be as smart. So we'll probably have to just epoxy this into place, and I'm probably going to flip this head over so that it can stand properly. We'll show you how to do it with a little bit of carpet and some wedges and blocking in order to stand it up so this can sit here and cure real well overnight. Let it sit for a day or two. Then we'll dress up this joint to make it look pretty. So hang in there, and we'll fix this. We'll fix this person's poor long earlobe. This is probably should have this in with equipment, but this is part of my kit here in the studio. I need to turn this head over so that he's upside down and make it very secure. Now this is something we keep in the studio, and this is kind of obvious, but most people don't think about it. This box is one of the most valuable tools I have in the studio in terms of what it costs and how much you use it. It has 1, 2, 3, it has all these dimensions are unique, okay? I can stand it up this way, I can rotate it different ways. This is a seat, this is a riser, I can stand on it. This is a support to boost work up in the air. And for this project here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn it over like this, let the spiders move on and do their thing. I'm going to clean it up a little bit. I'm going to use some of this carpet and maybe some other product in here just to keep it clean. And I'll just flip that head right over and stand it up in here. Now, there's a lot of things people can't afford to go buy, or they can't, or you can't buy them, you have to make them. But I'll argue that just about anybody can make one of these boxes. And you make it with unique, don't make it square, make it rectangular. And you'll have at least 1 dimension, 2 dimension, 3 dimensions to be able to use it and turn it. You'll sit on it, you'll stand on it, you'll put work on it, make it out of 2x. And it's one of those tools you just use all the time, and then I hang it on the wall when I don't need it. So I've got another couple of pieces like this that I use as risers that I can also sit on or stand on, and it's so much faster and so much easier. What I have to do is turn your stool to go up or down 1 inch, then to lift your work, reset your work, balance it all out, make it stable, and then keep working. So but just wanted to introduce you to my crate, and then when I need to go somewhere, it's a toolbox. I'll load it full of tools and take it with me. So make you a crate, and you'll really get a lot of use out of it. So let's get this head flipped over, clean this out, and get to work. You see that? That's pretty quick and easy right there. And you could very easily turn this, put some wedges in here. Got wedges, but it's pretty stable. And so as long as it's set right there, I think we're golden. So now I can clean this up. I get all that epoxy off there. And I won't need to press it or fight with it or nothing, because that's just about flat level plumb. So Makes a really quick, easy way to jig something. So make your crate. You'll use it more than you ever imagined. You can even cut handholds or whatever if you need to on it. But we'll clean this up, and I'm going to just take the point of my painter's tool here, maybe a little bit more, and very carefully work off this epoxy and clean it. I don't want to remove stone if I can avoid it, because the better my joint is, the thinner the glue is, the better it'll hold. I don't want a thick glue joint if I don't have to have it. So, but I'll get to work here and we'll do some scraping. Okay, that cleaned off really quick. I'm going to leave this old repair in because it's pretty sound, and it's not. I'm 90% sure that's a repair and not an inclusion, but it may be an inclusion. But the rest of this cleaned off in big sheets. That's the problem with a lot of adhesives that aren't designed for stone, is these came off in about 6 pieces, you know, and that's a flake that's almost as big as a dime right there. And if it already fell off one side and this side it just lifted right off, that's what happens when you don't use proper stone product. I'm gonna look. We may be able to drill this a little bit to get a pin in it, and that'll make a lot better repair. So we'll do some looking. Went up and got a die grinder with a real small diamond bit. I don't use these to carve. Some people like them. I don't. Never carve with them. But I was able to produce a pretty nice hole in there. Part of the key to this is keeping it wet, keeping it watered down really well. That does 2 things. That lubricates the cut, so you get a cut without as much stress to the stone. It also helps keep it cool. Now, this coarse stone's real sensitive to being thermal or getting too hot. That can cause it to move, cause it to crack. None of that's good. And while I was doing this, I went ahead and tested those repairs that I thought I might leave in place, and they just popped right off. So they also had a little bit of green around them, which made me understand that there was probably a gap so that there could be some organic activity in there. And so I just pressed them a little bit. They came off. So I'll fill this with new epoxy and have a better repair. That's always a judgment call. You've got to repair an old repair that survived the break. It might be good, but you got to test it and make sure. So now I know. Now I'm going to get the tape out, transfer this hole, show you how to do that, let this dry off just a little bit. We'll transfer that hole, and then I think I've got enough access if I drop this bit all the way down to get onto the ear. And we'll work on the top of the ear right there here in just a minute. Now, I can't lay claim to this method. Jim Sardonis taught me how to do this, to transfer a hole very easily. These 2 pieces of tape with the sticky side taped to each other. In theory, this is taped to the stone. So I've got my perfect witness for the hole that's in the stone, and I can set it on here. Get it lined up where it needs to be. And it's a little tricky on a crazy piece like this. Then you take it off, you got your perfect witness right there. See that? So now all I got to do is start that hole very carefully, and then I'll work to get it aligned so that it's at the same orientation as this hole, and we'll get it drilled out. But that's a really fast, easy way to transfer a mark. I could have cut that out. I really don't need to. I'll mark it here in just a second. There's my hole. There's my perfect transfer. So now I'll start drilling. Got to keep this one wet too. So we don't get any heat. And then I'll probably use just a small stud to align the holes, and then we'll go find a little stainless bolt to cut off, to have the threads, and make a really strong repair. And with the magic of video, got a nice hole there, got a nice hole there. I had to open it up a little bit on this side to make sure that this would set on there and be unencumbered. And I went up and got a little stainless steel stove bolt, clipped the head off, trimmed it to length, had to take just a tiny bit off. Obviously, if you're going to wallow one hole out, this mask can support it better than this mask. Now that fits on there really, really well. So we got to mix up some epoxy. We'll tape this off around the joint so I can fill here, and we won't get any extra on the stone. And we'll go ahead and glue it up. Right now I'm going to take a break for a little bit to make sure the stone dries, because we've been working with water. I'm going to let it set and really, really dry. Probably put a lamp on it and make sure it warms up good to drive off as much moisture as I possibly can, and that'll give me the best joint I can produce. So that turned out pretty well. Now all I got to do is glue it up. That's the easy part. Everything's nice and dry now. It's been under this lamp for, an hour or more. So everything's nice and dry. I went through and made sure that the pin needed just a tiny bit more trimmed off so that it didn't lift or interfere. The pin doesn't have to bottom out on both sides. The big thing is that it's in there and that it's threaded, and you can see where there's loss. And the only real feasible way to resolve that is with additional epoxy. And so we'll mix this up, and I'm going to tape up around the joint to keep the glue, the epoxy, from getting on the face. We don't need that. There was a big spot here back before. There was some on the face of this where it was yellow. And so we're going to mix this up and apply it. See, the stone is a little dirty. You can see where just blowing water across it cleaned it, and this is where you normally would, when you pick it up, you'd have arms on it, especially where these ears are broken. So we'll mix up some epoxy and tape it off and glue it up, and get some video in a second. Little tips. Okay, the parts A and B, use a separate stick. You're going to have to mix them up, make sure everything's nice and even if there's any separation. And if you use separate sticks, you're not contaminating one with the other and kicking off the whole bucket. So should seem obvious. Mix up a little extra. You may use all of it, but you want to have some extra so you can keep track of how it sets and how it cures, because if we come back here in a few hours or tomorrow or whatever, and the adhesive is still not cured, then our repair isn't going to be any better either. I like to use this blue painter's tape to mask everything. I like using it because I like to be able to see where I'm working. You can use regular masking tape, but it doesn't read as easily. You'll also be prone to leave small scraps in the repair. And this way, if there's any tape left, we'll be able to see it. But we've got this down pretty close to where the break is. And so we'll fill this. We've got some loss here on the front and some loss on the back. So start working on applying it. Your epoxy blended really well. Make sure you don't have any drips. If you're not used to doing this, you probably want to mask the whole bottom. Make sure to charge this hole pretty well. We want it to squeeze out pretty well so we've got a really nice joint. You should use an inert pin, whether it's brass or whether it's stainless, and get it in there. We'll get this to get a really nice fill. And then after this cures, we'll be able to remove the tape. And if there's any tape caught in the epoxy, we'll be able to slowly level the epoxy to the surface. And if you've done it right, as soon as you're flush with the surface, you'll resolve the tape because you'll just have the thickness of the tape in there. So, it's like welding. You're better to have a little extra reinforcement than not enough. So where there are a couple of big gaps, that's pretty much it. Now we'll let that set and cure, and it'll take a while. It won't cure immediately, but should be a really good fix. So next morning, check our epoxy. Everything's nice and dry like it's supposed to be. So the repair should be good too. So we'll go ahead and start stripping this off and leveling it out, and it should be wrapped up. Didn't try to tint this because the stone is so white. You can't really make the epoxy more white. So you just have to live with it. There's times when trying to tint or color the epoxy works well, and then there's times when it just doesn't. So start tearing this off. Repair's coming pretty well. Obviously, peeled off the tape. Most of the tape came right off. Leaves a very nice margin. I've been working it back with both just a little bit of sandpaper and a couple of gouges, a gouge and a couple of flat chisels, back bent and a straight one. And they really help get down to define particularly this line. Now by doing this repair carefully and working this line out to produce this line, that dark shadow is going to be pretty obvious, and that's going to catch light from a far distance away. So making sure that this definition and this resolution is really good on both sides will go a long way to this repair disappearing. I still have to trim off in the back. These tools will help level the repair, so I don't have to spend a lot of time. I don't want to take off any amount of stone because that's not the point. We're not trying to alter this. We're just trying to repair it. And so try to have the adhesive go well onto the edge, because this edge is probably fragile from where it fractured and broke. And so we want to make sure we secure some of this soft stone. So if there's a little bit of stone that's blended in, that's not too bad, but we don't want to change, like any of these surfaces, we don't want it to be concave and we don't want it to be convex. We want it to just be flush. So it's just a slow process, but it's coming along well, and it'll be done here in just a few minutes. Looks pretty good. It's got a nice fill. Surfaces are all very level. The back of the ear is kind of rough, so I had to be a little more careful cleaning it back here, so I didn't sand everything off as I was dressing it, because this wasn't finished as well as the front. So looks pretty good. Let's flip it over and check it out. This is all done. Now, I haven't washed the stone. I made a point of, you can see where there's a little bit of color difference where I just touched the surface as I was blending this repair. I haven't washed the stone yet. I'll check with the patron, but they didn't ask for it to be washed. And that's one of the things when you restore something. One of my sculptors always got very upset when they went to the cemetery and pressure washed a stone that'd taken 50 years to grow lichen and moss and all those things that made it look like an old piece of stone. And it takes just a few minutes to wash that off and take another 50 years for it to grow. So not clear that they want this stone washed. We'll double check, but that's about it. So. And if we do wash it, it'll just be washed with a gentle detergent, probably soapy water, and that's it. But this is one more project, repairing a broken earlobe on a bust of Buddha in some probably Asian marble on a piece of stone on a sculpture that came from London. It's here in South Carolina. So, and that's how you do it. So, once again, my name is Clint Button here at Carolina Sculpture Studio, showing you about conserving and restoring old work and doing basic repairs. So, thanks for coming in.